Palestinians are suffering, especially in Gaza. We hear this daily on the news. Any news source out there, the news sources that are openly pro-Palestinian, the ones that are kind of yeah, Israel, has a right to defend itself, but kind of yeah, outlets. We hear a lot of suggestions about how to end the suffering of the Palestinians, humanitarian aid, ceasefire, and so on. But what, first of all, are the Palestinians really suffering? If so, why? Who's at fault? And how can you end it without guaranteeing October 7th being repeated again and again as Palestinian leadership has promised us? Welcome to the reality show. I'm joined by Daniel, Michael, and Alex. Alex, I'll go to you first.
With you want my kind of first responses to that
Yes.
yeah. So well, I think that it's sort of there's a couple of things that are going on. So first off, the kind of entirety of the West and Israel has just been sort of permeate kind of, it's been really the dominant, I would say, idea that has permeated the culture is really altruism, right? And it's this idea that, yes, okay, there are these people suffering and there's no context to it whatsoever. And Israel, as a result, just has to completely ignore all reality and, sacrifice itself, to the cause, to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinians, right? And I think that so long as that is kind of the dominant idea and dominant narrative, there's actually going to be no resolution and no ultimate end to the suffering of Palestinians. And I'm sure that it's not pleasant to be living in tents on the beach, right? But that's really not Israel's fault, is it? It's actually kind of the idea that Israelis are like excited at having to spend billions of dollars a year to go and basically play like basically play like mommy and daddy, right, to the Gazans and make sure that they don't stick anything sharp in their eyes. That does not excite me. It doesn't excite anybody else. But it appears just to be it appears kind of to be the reality, and what way forward to that would be absolute defeat of Hamas and unilateral surrender.
Michael, your thoughts on how whether the Palestinians are really suffering and how we can alleviate their suffering, or should we?
Yeah, so one employee once said to me, and it was maybe the most intelligent thing he ever said, is that people are responsible for their own happiness. And in fact, America was built on the notions of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's ironic in America, of course, is that we decided that the government should figure out how we should pursue happiness, which is not what the country was founded on. It was founded on the notion that people should be enabled to pursue their own happiness. The other side of that, of course, is they are also enabled to hang themselves if that's their choice. And you have to allow people freedom. The people of Gaza elected Hamas. Israel left in 2005. Hamas was elected in a semi-civil war coup, whatever, but they were elected in elections that everyone was praising at the time, and that was when Hamas took over. Whether the people in Palestine, as they like to call it, or Gaza, as it is actually, are suffering or not, is actually not anybody's business except for the people and their government. The people have elected a terrorist government. I am not aware of a single terrorist government on the planet Earth that is interested in whether its civilians are suffering or not. And my belief is if you elected a government that doesn't care about your suffering, I am certainly not going to stand in and try to foist my foreign aid on you and my support to get you to stop suffering while your government is actively working against me.
Daniel.
Sorry, I was a bit distracted because I just realized Stop Anti-Semitism has just declared Candace Owens the 2024 Anti-Semite of the Year.
This
So
is
I'd like,
days ago, Daniel. You're
Really?
behind. She already did a show about it.
well, yeah, I saw the show yesterday. Anyway, more about her. I think we'll talk about her tomorrow, but on a different thing. Well, first of all, you know, whenever we talk about the suffering Palestinians or sort of the picture you get, I always remember this one Twitch streamer who I really he's pretty good on many things, but when it comes to anything else, he's pretty terrible. Someone asked him about Israel Palestine. He's not a political streamer. He was like, I will not take a side on this because war is bad and because people die. And it's this sort of like, imagine again, sort of you know, we always compare it to like Second World War, but imagine comparing it to any war, American Revolutionary War, the Civil War. It's like, no, war is bad. You just don't fight wars. No, like a complete. It's sort of that. It reminds me actually of something different. It reminds me of, and I cannot remember what is the Mike Tyson. Someone asked Mike Tyson who is he voting for, and he said Donald Trump, and someone else said, well, I disagree, and he was like, well, what are you gonna do about it? And it's like, what kind of reaction is that? This sort of like shut down your mind, this sort of stop thinking about it. It's just you just accept it and you move on. And yeah, it's this sort of when it comes to sort of suffering of Palestinians, it is similar. Like, shut down your mind. You see, here is a picture of Palestinians dying. Shut down your mind. Don't think about it. Don't think about the context. Don't think about how did we get here. Just this is bad, and we have to do something about it. And this is what is like really driving a lot of like Western thought, a lot of like Western actions, and it's really terrible because again, it inspires this idea of, as I said, basically shut down your mind, don't think about it, and it really destroys any capability of actually again fighting evil, recognizing evil, and doing something about it. And when you do that, it's not surprising what we see when it comes to the reactions of or the reactions of the international community towards Israel. Israel is automatically bad because Palestinians are suffering, and that's it. That no more thought is required, no more thinking is required. You just have the final, you know. Here is your final way to think about it, or not think about it, rather.
Yeah, I'm not sure I got the Mike Tyson point, but generally speaking, the opinions of convicted rapists are kind of something I pay a little bit
Wait,
less attention to.
is Mike Tyson?
Yeah, he
Oh.
spent years in jail.
Daniel doesn't know anything. This is like,
This was before he was born. Although I
pop
think the
culture
information
is
still.
just not your thing, Daniel.
But the Twitch streamer.
I just know him. I just know him from Hangover. I really know very little about him.
Did you know he was a boxer?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, he bit somebody's ear off in a boxing match because he didn't think he can win.
Well, now I do.
Anyway, whoever this Twitch streamer is who says war is bad is right, but that's why you do take a side. You take the side of the people who are not the reason why there is a war, and who, if they win, there will be no more war. This is so anybody who thinks war is bad genuinely looks at the situation will be a supporter of Israel. Michael, you mentioned the election in the Palestinian-controlled territories. Yeah, this was part of the Bush doctrine of exporting democracy, which is always weird to me. First of all, you're not exporting democracy. It's not an American product, and it's not the American system, although it is, America is certainly moving into that direction. The loopholes have been used properly to make America a democracy. But yeah, and we see how well that doctrine has turned
Very
out.
successful in exporting it to Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah,
as you can tell.
yeah.
Wait, I kind of do support the idea of exporting democracy. You know, drop Mitch McConnell in Gaza, drop Nancy Pelosi in Afghanistan. You know, here's politicians, figure it out.
Well, you could say that Biden went in a direction that's kind of worse than that policy. With Bush, he wanted regime change and he wanted democracy. Biden, the only regime he called for changing in the Middle East was the elected, Prime Minister of Israel. Oddly enough, when the regime in Syria fell, he did take credit for it. But yeah, that's also a point that we're not going to forget. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Thank you, Paul, for the super chat. And thank you, Paul, for another super chat. Paul says, Candace will be wearing that as a badge of honor. Yeah, I haven't seen her show about it, but it's her with a smile on the thumbnail and saying something like, I'd like to thank the Academy. So yeah, she's absolutely enjoying this. Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I think also there's this kind of idea that's been really going around and that's that, aid is just a fact of life, right? And that it's one will need aid and one will need to give a person aid, like we know that the sun is actually going to rise tomorrow, right? Like we know that we need air in our lungs. And it's the aid really and the demand for aid and the fulfilling fulfilling that demand is really perpetuating a lot of this conflict. And I really do have to disagree quite a lot with Michael, because Michael said that the terrorist government doesn't want the people, to suffer. They don't have any solution or something to the suffering, or they don't have any answer to it. They actually want them to suffer.
No,
So
that's what I was, by the way, we're in full agreement. I was saying
yeah.
exactly what you said. There's no terrorist government on earth that cares about the suffering of its people.
Well,
and you're right, even further, affirmatively.
I was going to say, I think they care about it a lot. Yeah, I think that's what I was going to say. I disagree. I think they really care about the suffering of the people. Okay. And they care about the suffering of the people. They want them to suffer a lot because that is part of the strategy, right? And the aid as well is also part of the strategy to raise money. So you have to say there's a financial incentive, right? Not just not just their kind of random moral depravity that they have. So you're not only are you not alleviating, right, any of the suffering, you're prolonging it, okay, by continually just sort of delivering this aid and not aid and not expecting anything in return for it. Like, okay, tell you what, we'll give this to you, but the moment we see it's being bartered for it's stolen and then bartered for money, which you then use to fund your war against Israel, therefore prolonging the war, then the aid is going to be stopping, right? Well, okay, I wouldn't give the aid at all, but I'm saying that there has to be some kind of expectation, right? But there's none. There's absolutely none. They know they're giving money to Hamas. They know they're giving aid to Hamas. I mean, and it really simply doesn't deter them, doesn't alarm them. So if anybody actually did want to alleviate suffering, I would say that would be a pretty big step in the right direction, that might have like a ripple effect throughout really the world. Because even now, right, HTS, the Syrian terrorist organization, they do want the humanitarian aid, and at least to them, Jabhat al-Nusra are at least kind of pretending, they're at least kind of playing along a little bit, that they're not a terrorist organization, and that maybe they actually will give it to the people, right, not just sell it for sell it to fund their war, right? So even they know.
Yeah, because they're well aware of how eager the West is to buy the bullshit of any Middle Eastern savage who will tell them, "Oh, we're totally on the side of the West. Give us money, food, and weapons." Michael.
Yeah, just to return to one of the sort of the underlying foundations here, one of the things that young people in the West take for granted, and it partly because mainly because their professors and their parents don't explain much to them is when you get on a Zoom call, you should ask a kid what needed to happen in a society to enable a Zoom call. And I'm not just talking about the companies that have the technology to deliver a Zoom call. I'm talking about all of the infrastructure, and I won't come up with all of it, but things from simple things like electricity, which is anything but simple, all the way to the technology and physics and engineering to actually engineer this kind of thing in the internet and the web and construct that with rules. And by the way, nobody had their own truth with any of this. These are called physical laws that had to be followed, and facts, which are indisputable. And that's what any engineer has to deal with, reality. And then you have to have the protection that we can actually get on the call, and that in the middle of this call, someone's not going to break down our door, come in and shoot us because we're criticizing someone. And there's a whole lot of other things in the middle. And when you go out and you see a skyscraper, the way Ayn Rand does such a beautiful job in Fountainhead describing what made that. Well, it was very simple what made that. Humans made that. From everything from learning to everybody who died building the earlier skyscrapers, and things collapsed and we learned and then we got better. And it is very hard to build a civilized system. When you go on TV and see a bunch of morons, and I mean these are morons, they may be clever, they may be able to build the system, but the hard work of building a civilized society, they cannot do it. When someone's on TV with guns showing everybody how macho they are, running around in their trucks, screaming like they're powerful, your ability to murder people in the middle of the day with a gun that somebody else made is not power. It's evil. What is power is having an idea to put a plane in the sky, keep it in the sky, and land it safely. That's power, and so on. So what's missing from the entire dialogue is that you cannot build a society by being macho and buying guns from someone, especially if Iran's selling. That's not how you build a country. You have to do the very hard, boring work of setting up a civilization that is protected and has the infrastructure, and then the security around the infrastructure, and the freedom to use the infrastructure, and to fix it when it breaks, to come up with a society. And this notion, this relatively simple facts of building a civilized society are missing from the entire dialogue. And there's never going to be a success in any of these backwards countries until the governments want to hunker down and they actually have people that want to build a society.
Yeah, I agree. And before you teach your kids what it takes to have for there to be a Zoom call or a skyscraper, have them read I, Pencil by Leonard Reed. That's a good start, and will help keep them off the streets next time there's a pro-Hamas protest. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, I just realized when I made a point about the twist rumor, I didn't actually finish it. So he was also saying about how, the war is bad because people die or specific civilians died. And I think there is and this is really what's driving a lot of Western sort of misunderstanding what war is, and misunderstanding also what governments are and what the people are. There is this dissolution or a complete divorce of the people and its government. Basically, there are these two entities. There is the Palestinian people, and then there is a Hamas. Hamas is ruling over by force over the Palestinian people, and the Palestinian people are this freedom-loving, basically, waiting to become to be part of like Western world, and this is simply not the case. What you get from Palestinians is exactly what they're getting from Hamas. That's why we don't see any revolts, any revolution against Hamas. It's even despite the fact that Hamas, for the most part, is really disappearing. Their grasp on Gaza is getting smaller and smaller. Yet we don't see any Palestinians coming out with the hostages. We don't see any information coming from the Palestinians about the hostages. The only time we hear the Palestinians speak out against Hamas is when they are under direct IDF occupation. And even then, we've covered one of the documentaries from within Gaza, and it's so little, and it's so like it really shows that whenever and also whenever the Palestinians speak out against Hamas, it's usually because they want something even more radical. So that much for that, and it's really sort of going back to this idea of bringing democracy to them. You also have to realize that when it comes to what Palestinian people want, and when it comes to sort of even the individual Palestinians want, you really can't force values. You really can't force people to think. Once you have people who are committed to the idea of basically killing any Israelis they can, there is no way to sort of change their mind by force, or sort of change the way they think, or sort of you just impose it on them. You just let them know that democracy is better, and that somehow, or you just allow them to have democracy, and somehow they'll choose the better values. No, that's why the Western style of government, and sort of even sort of democratic system, it is really hard system to keep going, because you need people to have certain respect for the system itself, for what underlies it, for certain amount of civility, for certain amount of civilization. And when they don't have that there is nothing you're getting. That's why whenever you have any sort of elections in the Middle East, it's not a magical solution. There needs to be something more, and Palestinians don't have it and don't want it yet.
El Rito says, it's disingenuous to dismiss anything Mike says because he's a convicted rapist. Just saying. First of all, I didn't dismiss anything he says. If Mike Tyson gives a speech about how he's still welcomed as a celebrity, while even though he's a rapist, while people were canceled for telling somebody she's pretty 10 years ago, that's an interesting thing from Mike Tyson that I'll listen to. But when he comments on who he's voting for, and then when somebody says they disagree, he says, "What are you going to do?" Like, what kind of a response is that?
Also, I remembered from that clip, he actually does talk about the him being a convicted rapist, and he said he likes Trump because he was the one defending him during that time. So again, not the brightest
Anyway,
recommendation.
yeah, but generally speaking, no, Mike Tyson is not where I go for erudite political commentary, but to each his own. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says she is a wicked witch. Candace, I'm assuming this was sent around the time we were talking about her, and yeah, we will be talking about her again tomorrow, unfortunately. Thank you, Paul, for the super chat. Paul says, you shouldn't feed the enemy, period. I agree. But Israel has been feeding the enemy, and it is now looking like there might be a ceasefire of sorts, or an actual ceasefire. Yeah, I don't know if we want to waste too much time on this, because if and when it does happen, it's going to be, I'm sure, the topic of many shows. But this is really it really makes me wonder, why now? Why now, when Israel, the same with the ceasefire in Lebanon, why right before you're about to win? I don't understand it. Alex,
Sorry, just to quickly jump in before Alex goes in, because you said, unfortunately, we have to cover Candace tomorrow. You're like the Palestinian people, like blaming Hamas for what they're doing. You're literally the director who picks the topics. I mean, come on.
Okay, let me explain why we're covering Candace tomorrow. We did the show about Candace a few days ago, where we talked about we basically debunked her and her guests' conspiracy theory about the USS Liberty, and we said, unlike past Candace Owens shows where we don't go through the incredible amount of baseless statements she makes, in this one we did go point by point. And this show, most of our shows get about 4 times as many likes as they get comments, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. This one got about 4 times as many comments as likes, and most of those comments were anti-Semitic and not even using Zionists. Like they were using the word Jews repeatedly. The word Jews appeared in the comments on this video probably more than almost certainly more than any other video we've ever done. And so that is the topic tomorrow. It's more of a show about Candace's audience than Candace herself. Alex.
Yeah, so to kind of to your point that you were sort of asking me about why I think that they're kind of pushing for a ceasefire at the moment, whilst you're kind of winning. I think that there's a few things. I think that number one, I'm not sure Israel has a choice in the sense that they're under partial embargo, so they don't have a lot of their munitions that they're not able to purchase themselves or build themselves, right? So that could be one of the reasons. And also because I think that there's this a desire on the part of the Americans to have a kind of a success, one last hurrah, right? From Biden, whose presidency has just been it's been filled with capitulation to Putin and capitulation and being a terrible ally. I mean, telling Ukraine they shouldn't win, and also how to use the weapons, right, that you give them. You can't use them offensively, which is just crazy. You can't win the war if you're not going to be shooting things into enemy territory. You need to be able to be offensive in order to defend yourself, right? And also then to Israel, right? Telling Israel as well to lose their wars. So it's so I think that that's the reason why they're doing it, right? But the idea is that in order for, and Ayn Rand understood this made this point many, many times, that in order for evil, okay, to thrive, it needs to be helped. And it needs to be helped by the good, right? And and you see this time after time, right? It doesn't really matter that the Gazans are entirely dependent on foreign aid, right? There's there's no stopping and thinking. Are these people actually kind of dedicated to our destruction? Are the things that they believe truly evil? So are we just we're just supporting the evil, we're just helping the evil? And and it actually is, I find it very, very demoralizing for myself, just personally, to be facilitating really my own destruction. And I really think that anybody who any Jew especially who conspires with this sort of idea that the Palestinian cause has any legitimacy, right? Even if they do it from altruistic notions, right, of being kind and compassionate and whatever, they do so at the expense of their self-worth, their self-esteem, the idea that they have anything, right, to live for. And because these are people who are committed to the destruction of the Jewish people, and that idea underpins everything that they pursue, right? It underpins absolutely everything, and they're willing to sacrifice everything to that notion, including their own lives. So this is an idea. Their ideas are inherently evil. It's Nazism, which is dressed up in all these kinds of kind of nationalistic claims, even Islamist claims, right? But just as the Nazis had to kill, they had to kill the Jews, right? Because they had to be, preserving their, Aryan race or whatever. the Palestinians have to kill the Jews because the Jews are, oppressing them and keeping them locked out of their homeland. So it's really just this philosophy over and over and over again that we see that yes, they want to kill the Jews, but they have some very, very good reasons, to want to do it. It's just the same ideology with a slightly different flavor. Irrational, anti-Semitic hate, anti-Semitism, just it often changes its colors, right? But this ideology has absolutely zero legitimacy. And it's so, what exactly does it mean, right? To free Palestine, right? The Palestinians want you to help them to have the freedom to destroy the Jews, right? And to create a dictatorship. So it's all illegitimate.
Yeah, and I hope you're right when you say this is kind of Biden's last the last thing that he's doing in the Middle East after taking credit for the success of Israel's actions, which he opposed, is to cause the ceasefire. I am a little bit concerned that it might be Trump. I very much hope that I'm going to be proven otherwise, but Trump did say October 7th never would have happened under me. Russia never would have invaded Ukraine. Trump wants to tell the world that wars are not going to happen under him. And I think Netanyahu, worries about Trump in a very different way than how he worries about Biden. There's no hope with Biden. With Trump, there's some hope, but he is a loose cannon, and we don't really know that he's, his support for Israel is principled. Michael.
True, but I just want to say as well, it does actually make me sleep a little bit better at night because at least Trump, I do believe, does strike fear into the heart of America's enemies. So I'm not really, I don't want to defend Trump, but that's, don't blindly defend him, but yeah.
Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden has coddled all of the terrorists in the world. No one has provided a reasonable explanation why he would relieve the sanctions that Trump put on, other than to do something anti-Trump. The Democrats were unable to enunciate any good reason to allow Iran to bring in the billions of dollars of oil money that they brought in. And of course, and the IAEA, the amazing IAEA, just found out yesterday that the old production quotas in Iran are no longer relevant because they're already way beyond them. This organization, which really has an IQ total of 60 amongst all of its people, and the millions and probably tens of hundreds of millions of dollars that go into support this incompetent organization. No one can explain that. And as Alex started with, evil has definitely been helped along the entire time. Every time Israel gets into a defensive war or a reactionary war, a counter-terrorism war, the world has stopped it because it's just been too damn successful. Shame on it. And the pieces of crap. And I really, folks, if there's a better definition of people who get guns for free from Iran and go kill people, including their own folks, than pieces of crap, please tell me, because I don't understand it. And support that regime. I'm not as concerned as Razi is. I mean, just an article just came out before the show today that we could have a ceasefire within a month. Now, that's a lot different. That's putting us up right against the inauguration. That's a lot different than the ceasefire that every time we turn around, Blinken and these other geniuses involved here have been talking about a ceasefire any day now. I mean, this thing we've been hearing about a ceasefire for almost 14 months or 15 or 16 months. It's crazy. And Hamas relented and decided the war doesn't have to stop and Israel doesn't have to pull out. Hamas is getting their butts kicked. So I wonder if this whole shenanigan is a slow walk. I wonder, if I think the big thing that the U.S. is holding over Israel right now and why the Jewish folks in the administration and that are near the government, especially the anti-Biden Jewish folks, are not screaming about this to the public, that Biden continues to slow walk offensive weapons and so on to Israel is beyond me. But I think they're holding over a UN resolution that says that Israel has to give up something or have a two-state or some crap like that, as if any UN resolution has any meaning anymore. It didn't before, and it certainly doesn't now. And we all know that as soon as Trump gets into office, he hates the UN. He hates UNRWA. They stopped funding for UNRWA. They're not going to do it. They stopped, I believe they stopped for UNIFIL as well. And it needs to continue. So I'm hopeful that this is a shenanigan that's going on, another one just for the public to see how we're all in good faith, negotiating in good faith with terrorists, who, by the way, as Alex said, and just to reiterate, the charter for Hamas is the destruction of Israel. This is not just statements that they make. They have it written down, and this is what they stand for. The last point I'll make is it's very simple how this thing ends. There should be only one ending, and that is two things. One, Hamas surrenders, and two, all of the hostages are returned. It's that simple. Could have been done on October 8th. It can certainly be done now, and it can be done at any time. Trump did say there will be hell to pay. He didn't just stop at saying there will be no war. He said there will be hell to pay. And I think Trump does care. It used to matter if an American was held hostage in a foreign country. Under Jimmy Carter, it didn't. And anyone who disagrees with that should just go read about how Iranians held hundreds of American hostages for over a year, I believe. I think it was over 100, for over a year. And somehow Ronald Reagan, when he came into office, didn't have to fire a shot. He made a few phone calls. And magically, the hostages were released from Iran. Now, we've got a proxy of Iran holding 8 American hostages, or 7, depending on how you count. And I think everybody understands that Trump is going to come in there and make a few phone calls. And if things don't quickly resolve, he will go and get the hostages out, or he will obliterate what is left of Gaza, trying to get them. It should matter, as Alex said, it should matter that people are afraid of America. Prancing around with your amazing aircraft carriers and your strike groups only matters if you show people you're willing to use it. Otherwise, it might as well be a gun with no bullets.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, considering the fact that Hamas's charter calls for, the extermination or the elimination of the Jewish state, you would hope people would keep that in mind when Hamas agrees to a ceasefire and ask, have they changed their mind about that? Or is it just that they don't think currently it will further that goal if they keep fighting, so they need a break? Hopefully Israel will consider that. But yeah, some of the reports I've seen today aren't talking about a month. They're talking about the next few days. They're talking about during Hanukkah, which is offensive. It's offensive in its own right. But and there was some talk about Netanyahu maybe going to Egypt, which has been denied. And I wondered about that also in the context of, can he get arrested if he goes to Egypt, and what happens if that happens. But anyway, and the deal they're talking about is something like a 60-day ceasefire where some of the hostages are released, perhaps the female soldiers and some of the civilians, but male soldiers will stay. So yeah, first of all, there should not be a deal with Hamas under any circumstances, but this is a bad deal even as deals with terrorists go. Daniel.
Well, first of all, let me remind people that today's episode of the reality show, as well as every episode of the reality show in the month of December, is sponsored by Jim Brown's new book, A Black Hole in Economics, Money Creation and Its Consequences. Let me read you a small review from one of the readers. This book explodes off the page. Jim Brown tears down the impenetrable shell around banks and money creation to reveal the surprising story around money, credit, and the financial institutions we unthinkably trust. Deeply researched and passionately argued, A Black Hole in Economics succeeds as both a textbook and a guide. The payoff is actionable ideas to thrive even amid a rocky financial future. Also, all proceeds from the book go towards the support of Ayn Rand Centre UK. And as I always say, money is the most important invention we ever sort of discovered as humanity collectively or individually, and so understanding it, especially in the age of sort of 2% in target inflation rate, when you are told into the future that you will lose money, is I think this book works real well to understand that, and also how to defend yourself against that. Link for the Amazon link is in the chat. It's also a pinned comment and also in the description, so you should be able to find it easily. Now, going back into the topic, first of all, we have one troll in the chat talking about how Zionism was a bad idea, or Zionism is a bad idea. Just want to quickly say something on that. Generally, this idea of you could argue. I mean, historically, I don't think there is a case, but just assume that the establishment of Israel was like wrongly done or was bad or anything like that. Well, the fact is, Israel is here right now. It's the most free nation in the Middle East. The people there want freedom. Or want relative freedom, want to stay free. As we always say, it's the only nation in the Middle East that is free. What does it mean to not be Zionist or to be anti-Zionist? Do you want Israel to be gone? Is that what the advocacy is for? So again, whenever someone tries to say, well, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Well, what do you mean by anti-Zionism? You want Israel to be gone? For what reason? And sort of the other side of that coin, the people who chant Free Palestine. What do you want from it? Why is it unacceptable to just say, well, I just want the Palestinians to be free? Why is there no demand of, no, I want a proper society to be another proper society in the Middle East besides Israel? I want them to be like America. I want them to be like the European countries. Why is there no demand for that? Why is it acceptable to basically Palestinians to want to create another Iran or another Saudi Arabia or whatever else, and that is like okay to be? Like, if you had someone in America arguing that we should establish a Christian theocracy, you would laugh him off. You would say, no, this is like a terrible thing. When the founding fathers fought against the British, it wasn't just free America because we are different from them or something like that. No, it was the recognition that for human life to prosper, you need to have a certain recognition of individual rights. There needs to be a certain respect for life, liberty, and also property, and the pursuit of happiness. And they saw Britain as one of the only nations at the time sort of having at least some basis for it. But they said, we can do better. This is not what Palestinians want. Palestinians are not fighting against Israel because, well, the judicial courts are maybe a bit too much like that, and we don't like the system, and the economy is too regulated, and Israel owns too much, as Dave Smith likes to argue. Israel owns too much of the land directly, like state-owned land. There's too much state-owned land. It's nothing like that.
Love how we got a Dave Smith reference right there at the end. So, one of the politicians in Israel who, completely out of context, if you just look at what they say when it comes to war, sounds like one of the more reasonable ones, is Itamar Ben-Gvir. Now, anything else he says does not ever, hardly ever sound reasonable, but also his ways are not the ways of a rational person, although what can we expect from a politician? But there's something that happened yesterday that I wanted to quickly talk about. There was the vote in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, about the budget, and Ben-Gvir, who is a minister in the government, voted against it. And his party, which is in the coalition, voted against it. Now, in Israel, a vote against your own government is a de facto resignation, but for some reason, this hasn't been taken as a resignation, nor has he been fired, at least yet. And I'm wondering what this means. I also wonder what it means if he is out of government, because Netanyahu, as we know, is not exactly, somebody who decides what to do based on principle. He decides based on who wields the most power over him. Is it Biden? Is it the right wing part of the coalition? Is it the more left wing part of the coalition? And so in that sense, I'm a bit concerned about Ben-Gvir being out of government. But I absolutely think, something like this not resulting in him getting fired is also a sort of statement that really he is in some ways the de facto leader. Alex, any thoughts on that?
I have to admit, I did not. I'm not really following the grindings of Ben-Gvir, although I mean he's very clownish. It's a big, for me he's a very clownish character. But he I just also want to mention something here, right, Razi? You mentioned I didn't even know this, but the Biden administration, I think, is talking about getting a ceasefire for Hanukkah. I think that's because I think that's because they fundamentally don't understand what was happening, right? For the story of Hanukkah, which is a very important story. In that even the Maccabees, okay, understood that freedom is an existential imperative. And they understood it. The Maccabees were the Jews, and they realized it to such an extent that, and they knew that they could not live under the dictatorship of the Greeks, that they wanted to fight. And the Maccabees, actually in Aramaic, it means to strike a hammer blow into the heart of the enemy. And the Maccabees, they fought a brutal, I mean, they were guerrilla warfare, right? In order to not live under the Greeks. And I think that I think that I don't know why you would want to, what Hanukkah has to do with it, because capitulating and surrendering is nothing that the Maccabees ever did. So I don't really but it's actually very it's a bit what.
I don't want to put a pro ceasefire deal spin on this because I'm anti-ceasefire, but the idea that the hostages will be free, I guess, is what is the
Yeah.
Hanukkah spin on this.
No, I guess so. Okay, fine. Fair enough. For me, I'm just thinking about, it's actually really nothing to do with Hanukkah. But, but okay, so even the Maccabees understood that freedom is actually a total imperative, right? And when I say freedom, I mean, we're not going to live under any kind of weird dictatorship, right? Who's going to force us to be, force us to participate in whatever they've got going on, right? So it's either freedom or it's nothing. Okay. Without freedom, you don't have any production. Without freedom, you don't have any ability to really, reason your way out of situations. And so and that would be great if real freedom, right? When I'm talking real freedom, I mean political freedom, economic freedom, is what the Free Palestine lot we're talking about. I would be the first to go out there and to march, because I would understand that, oh gosh, they're gonna actually, they're gonna give freedom to the to the Arabs. And I don't think that what makes the Arab savages is the fact that they speak Arabic, or that their hair is brown, or that they were born in Gaza, or any other kind of superficiality. What makes them savages is is the fact that they have completely rejected all of the potentially good ideas which dominate the culture of their enemy, right? Which is Israel. So everything that they see from Israel, whether that's greenhouses, whether that's any kind of, they see Israel sort of mixed economy, but people opening up businesses, right? They see that and they want absolutely the opposite, right? And because in no place in the Middle East that they've actually embraced any kind of freedom, even they reject all fundamental fundamental freedoms, right? They don't know what individual rights are, even in the so-called civilized places like United Arab Emirates, right? The only reason that they have this veneer of respectability is because they were able to, commandeer steal basically the oil rigs that other people went out and discovered using technology that is not theirs. And so what makes Israel good is not the fact that it's run by Jews. What makes Israel good is not the fact of anything. It's the values that underpin its existence. Okay, that there is respect for individual rights and people are pursuing a life and flourishing. And what makes the Palestinians savages is their ideas. Okay, it's nothing else, no other superficiality.
Yep. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Robert Nasser says Trump certainly knows all about hell to pay. That has not been verified by independent fact checkers. As far as we know, it is real hair. Anyway, Michael.
Well, I think to add on what Alex said and what we talked about earlier, let's be clear. If you're anti-Israel, you're anti-Western. And the stupidity, and I mean the pure stupidity, and I think, frankly, amongst most of our politicians, they're not that stupid. They're just malicious because they know exactly what's going on. Which means that if you're against Israel, you're against America. And it's no surprise that death to Israel is followed quickly with death to America, burning American flags also. That's super cool to do. And of course, our college idiots have picked up on it while they're in a protected school, in a protected institution, and so on and so forth with technology and infrastructure that's unparalleled. It is absolutely the foundations of Western civilization that are going up against barbarism. This isn't a clash of two civilizations. This is a clash of civilization versus barbarism from the 7th century, whether it's BC or AD, of people that want to pray all day, subjugate women, and make sure that everybody lives exactly the way the leaders tell them to live. And individuals don't matter, and it just follows from there. We're not talking about subtle differences here, folks. We are talking about 180-degree difference to a return to a totally disastrous time when barely 1 billion people, probably actually back then, no, it wasn't. I'm not even sure the population of humans was over 100 million, could survive, because if you don't have technology, you die. And that's what we're talking about. And instead of our Western leaders, and it doesn't take that much. It takes a few good Western leaders to stand up there and describe what is right and wrong. I talked yesterday's show about the beginning of the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln was, after 407 years ago, he talked about a country that was dedicated to liberty and the pursuit of equality for people. He did not say dedicated to equality, because people are not equal. People are born equal under the law, but to liberty, that the liberty of a person is what matters, and that we need to strive towards equality, and that we have to abolish slavery. But it started off with a principle. It was a foundation. And I am much more in support of Trump than I ever was on any Democrat recently. But I don't love Trump. And the reason I don't love Trump or like him very much is because most of his stuff is not based on principles. We need leaders that understand principles. It's not that hard to enunciate the basic principles that underlie Western civilization: life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what does it. And you start from there. And if things start to violate those principles, you got to think twice, and you got to get back on track. And I don't know, as Alex said, I am certainly not aware of a single country in the Middle East that has any of those principles, including Bahrain and the UAE and so on. And they want to be in the economic zone of the West, and they want to have airports that can fly people from A to B, and that's great. And I'd love to use them too, but they're not equal. So this is what we need to look for leaders that can start to enunciate fundamental principles.
You
Thank
know,
you, Robert.
my,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just want to say, Michael, you're being unbelievably unfair. And, you're saying that none of them know anything about freedoms. In Saudi Arabia, 5 years ago, they started to let women, drive. So
Yes,
this
right.
is, yeah, there you go. It's really, you're totally wrong.
Yeah, totally. Again.
If people weren't canceled for jokes nowadays, I'd make a joke there, but instead I'm going to read Robert Nasser's comment. Thank you, Robert, for being a YouTube member for 31 months. Robert says, Daniel is asking all the right questions. Yes, do take their premises seriously, just long enough to ask the reality-based questions. Kudos. And Yair says, where is this? The Maccabees were religious dictators. Yeah, so that might be a topic for another day, but I'm not sure the Maccabees were the good guys in that. I mean, I grew up on stories that they were, but mostly on donuts and dreidels.
But the
So
point is that
AKs.
they were warriors, is what I was trying to say. They engaged in guerrilla warfare. They did not surrender. That's what I was trying to mean. That by it's not about whether they're the good guys or the bad guys. It's the fact that they were like they were absolute warriors that fought back against the Greeks. Yeah.
And just quickly, Michael, I know you have to go. Where can people find you?
Hoffman 2F's LinkedIn. Thanks,
And
everybody. Sorry to run right at the top of the hour.
all right, we'll see you soon. Daniel, do you have any parting thoughts or want to tell us where can people find you? Because we also have to go. The Hanukkah thing might be its own episode, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do a lot
It's
of research.
getting very angry actually about this. You're triggering me about the Maccabees.
I mean, Cenk Uygur is a multi-millionaire from being angry. So maybe we do need to trigger
Yeah.
each other a bit more. But we are out of time, so we'll have to do it some other day. Daniel, parting thoughts and where can people find you?
Well, we have Atlas Shrugged Book Club coming up. So just quickly, for anyone caring for the people in the Middle East, you should defend and advocate for the one nation that actually delivers on giving, has some respect for the individual rights, property rights of its people, and all people, this whatever race or whatever background they come from. And you can find me on my YouTube channel, Damn Dan.
Alex, where can people find you?
Uh, uh, here on the Ayn Rand Centre, and I recommend Bitronistim and the story of the Maccabees.
Thank you, PC, for a last-minute super chat. PC says, have a great evening. All have a great evening as well. You can find me on X, Razi Ginsburg. We'll be back tomorrow with the Daily Objective and the reality show. And as Daniel mentioned, the Atlas Shrugged Book Club starts now. See you tomorrow.